Hey guys, PhazePlays here with a build guide for Bleed SLAMS Slayer. This build revolves around Ground Slam of Earthshaking, but with a bit of a twist. We can swap out Ground Slam for Sunder or Earthquake depending on the situation. The build is fast, slams cover the entire screen, it's fun to play, and damage is great. With high-end gear, bleed damage reaches the dot cap, around 35 million, on top of solid hit damage and 20% cooling strike. Defense is great with endurance charges, fortify, some maximum resistances, and absurd recovery with 10-second overleech. Later on, we also have the option of going the new Ascendancy node Schizophrenic Dissociation for even more tankiness. Vaal Ground Slam feels fantastic to press and provides 360 degrees of coverage. The single target setup may be a bit intimidating, but some of it's droppable for those that prefer a more relaxed playstyle. This build should be fantastic for the reworked breach mechanic. Here's a quick breakdown of the slam options. Ground Slam of Earthshaking is a wide frontal cone slam. The coverage of this skill is enormous. It quickly expands with no delay and has a better chance to stun. Vaal Ground Slam is a huge omnidirectional version of Ground Slam. It has 4 charges, costs very few souls, and has a soul gain prevention of only 1 second. It's basically spammable. Sunder is a long, narrow slam that gets wider as it travels. Each enemy hit by Sunder sends out shockwaves to nearby enemies. It shreds dense packs of enemies. These shockwaves can proc Slayer's 20% cooling strike, and they can even aggravate bleeds from the same attack. Sunder excels in long, narrow maps, or if you need a bit more reach for bossing. Sunder is perfectly fine to run until 2 or 4 void stones. Earthquake has 2 parts, an initial ground hit and then a huge aftershock that expands after a short delay. The aftershock does much more damage. Earthquake's specialty is being omnidirectional. It's great for those that don't want to aim in a specific direction. Less duration is a required support for Earthquake. Vaal Earthquake procs aftershocks as you move for a duration. It's pretty nice for mapping, but it can't be exerted. Narrow straight map like Silo, Uber Saurus and want a bit more range? Consider Sunder. Fighting Uber Exarch and want an omnidirectional skill for the ball phase? Swap to Earthquake. The bleed damage from each of these slams is pretty similar, so feel free to experiment and run whichever you prefer. For mapping, Ground Slam of Earthshaking handles both clear and single target. Couple it with Vaal Ground Slam, and you can somewhat reliably alternate between Ground Slam and Vaal Ground Slam. It's smooth and satisfying to play after getting into a rhythm. Vaal Ground Slam is especially useful when you want total omnidirectional coverage and don't want to move your cursor behind you. Be aware that Fist of War does not work for Vaal Ground Slam. Single target is a bit more involved. We add Static Strike into the mix. After hitting an enemy with this melee attack, it rapidly hits nearby enemies for a few seconds. This serves 3 purposes. It applies increased damage taken from maim, it quickly aggravates any bleeds, and will rapidly summon minions from Herald of Purity for the Rallying Cry damage buff. The bleed from Static Strike can even clear maps on its own to an extent. Pretty cool. Only press Rallying Cry on single target when you have the minions active. It's not needed for mapping. For maximum burst damage, the opener would look something like this. Drop War Banner, cast Vulnerability, Static Strike, Rallying Cry, press Tincture, then slam away to get a nice initial bleed rolling. If you prefer less complexity, consider dropping any combination of Static Strike, War Banner, or the Tincture. Remember to turn off the Tincture after 5 or 10 seconds to avoid running out of mana. For leveling, use Spectral Throw until level 12. Run Precision until you reach Resolute Technique. Put a Ground Slam gem in your offhand to level it up. At level 12, swap to Sunder and run that for the rest of campaign. At level 24, we add Auto Exertion and Vulnerability. And at 38, we add Fist of War. In the 3rd lab, you can either farm for Ground Slam of Earthshaking or just stay Sunder for map progression and swap to it later. Whichever skill you use, it's worth getting 20% quality. Keep your weapon up to date at all times. Gambling for axes or any slots you need sockets in is incredibly powerful. Save gold as you approach maps and then heavily gamble for 2-handed axes in Act 10. The Ascendancy is Slayer. First, Bane of Legends. A nice chunk of damage and reflect immunity is nice quality of life. Second, Headsman for some extra mobility and the God tier 20% cooling strike for 25% more damage. Third, Brutal Fervor for comfy 10-second overleech and some damage mitigation. Fourth, we take Impact for 60% area of effect while mapping and a bit of extra hit damage. Eventually, we have the option of grabbing Schizophrenic Dissociation for enormous damage mitigation at the cost of a bit of damage. For this setup, we'd run different clusters and add in Aspect of the Spider. Here's leveling progression. After Mana Flow, swap out Dash for Frostblink. After the long journey to Resolute Technique, drop Precision. With the Exert wheel, make sure both Intimidating and Seismic Cry are auto-exerted. Then we start grabbing bleed nodes. Be sure to use the loadouts at the top right for early game, mid game, and late game. There are multiple gear sets. Ideal axe bases are Sundering Axe early on and late game a Vaal Axe. The damage while leeching crafts on gloves and amulet are huge value. Rizlatha's Coil is a massive damage increase, catalyst it with attack quality. Light of Meaning is great in this socket, but Falborn the Red Dream along with fire resistance tattoos would easily replace it if you can get a hold of one. For Life Flask, you can either run the Worm Flask for better Overleech sustain, or no Life Flask for a greedier setup. For medium clusters, the priority order is Flow of Life, Rend, Circling Oblivion, Wound Aggravation, and then Wasting Affliction. For large clusters, you want an Axe and Sword 8 passive with Feed the Fury and Fuel the Fight. And for the third notable, either Heavy Hitter or Martial Prowess. For jewels, here's a list of mods we want. Be sure to check the notes section in Path of Building. There's also a written guide for this build. If you ever run Earthquake, don't take the skill effect Duration Mastery, and be sure to pair it with less duration support. Try to avoid volatility for mapping, as it'll likely make clear inconsistent. The Hemophilia gloves are a solid option if you'd like maximum clear with explosions, especially with the vulnerability on hit corruption. Be sure to check out my Recombinator axe crafting guide to craft your endgame axe. Click like and subscribe if you enjoy the video. As always, thanks for watching.